the reputation and work that you've put into these platforms is part of your identity. If you're a person who makes really good playlists on Spotify or write really good book reviews on Goodreads, that's reputation that you have built on these platforms, which if it were portable, could get you access to opportunities or, like jobs or like whatever that you really need luck and the right connections for today. It's harder to talk about identity than other verticals because it spans everything we do, right? And it's context dependent and it evolves constantly with the social interactions we have, the art we consume, the knowledge and skills we accrue.
Hi everyone, we are excited to bring you another insightful episode of NEWFORUM. NEWFORUM is a community inviting purpose-driven visionaries, creators, developers, and investors to spark accessible conversations on the topics of crypto, the metaverse, NFT, and everything Web3. And today we have a wonderful guest speaker, Nichanan Kesonpat. Nich is currently a researcher and head of platform at 1KX, an early-stage crypto-native investment firm. At 1KX, she dives deep into various emerging verticals in Web3 to help develop investment theses. Nich publishes long-form writings intended for builders and enthusiasts to get an overview of the landscape, current challenges, and outlooks. Before 1KX, Nich was a smart contract engineer working on projects across DeFi, NFTs, and social, such as Mochi Game. She also serves as a member of Consensys Academy, blockchain developer bootcamp, and a DAO operator for Meta Gamma Delta, a grants DAO focused on supporting women founders in Web3. So Nich, you have such a diverse background with a lot of experience within the Web3 space. It would be really interesting to know more about your journey. Tell us more about your Web3 story. What brought you to the crypto industry?
For sure. Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here. So I had heard of Bitcoin in passing for a while before I got into crypto, but I actually dove in to learn more in around early 2017 when I was working as a tech recruiter for a YC startup in San Francisco. And Naval Ravikant was an angel investor in that company, and he had come to our office for a fireside chat. And he talked about programmable money and why we need decentralization, brought up Bitcoin, Ethereum, and so on. So that kind of got me down the rabbit hole of learning as much as I could. And as a way to solidify what I was learning, I started publishing articles on a personal blog. And at the time, there were only white papers and big ideas and not a lot of live applications. So my writing was mainly like technical explainers of things like anatomy of a blockchain transaction, different consensus protocols, how smart contract works, etc. And then I moved to Thailand right before the ICO boom and joined a local blockchain incubator that was looking to support founders building in the space. And through that, we came up with this idea for an NFT project that channels money into wildlife conservation initiatives. And this was early 2018, so there weren't many Solidity devs around. So I just leveraged YouTube tutorials and online blogs and stuff and hacked together an MVP dApp for it and became sort of the product engineer for the project. So it turns out it wasn't quite the right time and the infrastructure and market wasn't ready for something like that. But I used the experience there to freelance for about 2 years as a Solidity developer. So at the beginning of the pandemic, I became interested in DAOs, and the first one that I joined was Meta Gamma Delta, right as they formed. And this spun off from another DAO called Meta Cartel as like a woman founder focused grants DAO. So in that ecosystem, I met Peter Pan, who's now my colleague at 1KX. He's shaped a lot of thinking around DAOs to this day. And he eventually pulled me into the role I have now at 1KX, which involves a lot of research, writing, and developer ecosystem building efforts. So in many ways, my role in the industry right now is come full circle from where it began with a lot of research and developer focused stuff.
Yeah, I'm quite fascinated by your background. I actually did a bit of research, and you've done so many things. Like you've been a program developer, and you've been part of so many exciting projects. And you've done your own startup as well, which was a decentralized app, right? You just mentioned it, which is wow, I love it. So it would be interesting to know actually also what brought you into the research, and maybe you can also explain a bit more about decentralized digital identities. What is that at all, and how does it differ from usual traditional centralized methods of identity verifications?
Sure. So I mean, I think like high level picture of like what excites me about the space and a lot of my work now, and then we'll dive into the identity aspect of it. So like the industry evolves so quickly that even though I'm not as like OG as the people who mine Bitcoin on their laptop, you get to experience multiple cycles and get to notice trends after just a few years, right? And this is because of the permissionless nature of blockchains. It allows anyone to experiment quickly and leverage things that have been built before them, in contrast to the innovation that happens in silo because of proprietary technology. So like over the past few years, what's been really exciting is seeing infrastructure that was at first developed by a small group of people for one use case that becomes a building block for like entire verticals and entire markets in the industry. So one example is the ERC 721 standard that was worked on by members of the Dapper Labs team and along others who after CryptoKitties. And now NFTs are everywhere, right? Which created a market for now NFT financialization infrastructure like lending protocols. And then like Uniswap started out as just a decentralized exchange application, but now their contracts are now infrastructure for like yield farming and automated liquidity management protocols. Like Gnosis built a multi-sig for themselves to handle the funds that were coming in from their ICO. And that multi-sig eventually became Safe, which currently holds like about $35 billion today across smart contract wallets and DAO treasuries. So a lot of the work I'm doing now is like playing around with these emergent technologies and things that looks like toys or simple features today that might become critical infrastructure in the upcoming years. And then in parallel to that, like developer tooling improves so much. So what took me hours or days to achieve in 2018 as a smart contract dev is now possible with just one line of code. So on top of these reusable and composable smart contracts, the ecosystem has been a lot more developer friendly and abstracts away the low level stuff that they can build really good looking dApps and compelling use cases that opens up the addressable market to more users. And so that's why we're starting to see identity sort of stuff being emerging now with like with a lot of DAOs that hold billions of dollars in treasury and contributors coming in from around the globe that are starting to contribute and build their reputation, and then being able to prove that they've contributed to certain things to unlock other opportunities. And that's becoming like kind of the like a crypto native way to build identities, because they have their own wallets and they have tokens they can vote with and NFTs they can and so on. From the user side of things, the profiles and reputation and identity that we have on platforms like Instagram isn't really ours. And if we have built an identity or sometimes like a livelihood that depends on that, it's a big thing to put in the hands of one company who could make the decision to lock you out of your account or change their product direction to one that doesn't serve you anymore. So decentralized identity shifts this paradigm and treats everyone as peers to each other. So instead of using your Google account to log into something, you're logging in with a key pair that's managed by a wallet that you have entire control over. So you build your identity not with a third party, but with this key pair, which could be a crypto wallet or could be like an identity wallet that with built-in DIDs. When you build your reputation on these apps, you can allow apps to add new information about you that you can keep in your wallet. So if that app ever goes away, the work that you've done and identity that you've built is still there and can be leveraged by other platforms.
There are so many concerns around security and privacy, and you mentioned a few really good points about it just now. So I wonder really, how can decentralized digital identity help this issue and ensure the security and privacy of personal information?
It's worth mentioning that right now there's still a gap between folks who have been working on SSI, like sovereign identity, and decentralized identity outside of crypto and Web3 and those who are more crypto native. So over time, I hope we see this converge, but for now, the two are kind of like building in parallel at the moment, but aren't too interoperable. But we're building towards this like goal of decentralized, overarching goal of decentralized identity where people have their own data, right? So a real life example of someone more in the SSI space would be Identity Wallet, where you take your financial data with you for payments. Nuggets is an example of this. Portable is infrastructure and a product that's soon to launch that uses verifiable credentials to represent your financial data. So the proposition is for Web2 financial services like Venmo, Robinhood, where right now users have to re-KYC for every new financial service that you sign up with. But if your KYC status was portable, you can sign up for these services with your wallet and can attest your KYC status without having to redo it for each app every single time. And it also reduced the data maintenance costs for these companies as well, because right now, every year they're sending us emails saying like, is your KYC, is your information up to date? And you have to reattest your information for every service. With something like SSI and wallets, you can have this KYC status in your wallet and then allow them to read this information right away. And they can be more confident that it's up to date because the users are just updating it once and allowing them to read from it. And then on the crypto native side, there's been a lot of experimentation that makes use of already public on-chain information, as that data is already available and you don't need to ask anyone's permission to use it. So this can be like on-chain credit scoring based on your activity in lending protocols that could make you eligible for like more favorable loan terms in different DeFi protocols. It could be DAO memberships based on token or NFT holdings or voting activity, or like access to product discounts or free merch based on the NFTs that you hold. The Web3 identity equivalent for single sign-on right now is login with your crypto wallet. So similar to how if you sign up for Spotify with Facebook, like you can choose to let Spotify read your Facebook friends list and suggest people to follow. When you log in with your wallet, the app can read your token holdings and on-chain history and determine whether or not you're eligible for a Discord role or NFT claim. So the difference here is, again, is that if you get locked out of Facebook and any of these federated identity players, you lose your friends list and that identity you've built on there. With SSI, no one can lock you out or take your assets and data from you. You could lose your private keys and wallet access, but that's more of a UX, like a wallet UX and key management problem as opposed to a data sovereignty one.
Yeah, that's right. And actually, yeah, there is so much concern around data privacy and security, I guess. And you touched a couple of really good points there. And so I imagine this is really much better, right, to have the decentralized digital identity rather than the traditional way of using the identity.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, there's still some debates and questions around what's the best way to be privacy preserving and where to store data and all that. But since with decentralized identity, everyone has like a DID and a key pair that users can use to encrypt their data and store it in the cloud or like secure enclaves on your phone. There's options for that there. And with verifiable credentials, there's methods for you to prove that you meet a certain criteria without revealing all the information. So this is where things like zero knowledge proof technologies come in, where if your VC is attached to a zero knowledge signature, you can do things like prove that your account is over a certain threshold of holding without revealing the actual exact balance. And then there's also like infrastructure for access control logic, where there's multiple options that can be determined by the users or recommended to them where they store their data, whether that's in a personal server or a cloud, encrypted, or on their phones, and determine like different capabilities that third parties have to access them.
That's fantastic. So, and actually, you mentioned so many great advantages for people for the digital Web3 identity. But I don't know if you want to dive a bit more and explain the benefits for organizations and society as a whole.
Sure. So with identity, it's it's harder to talk about identity than other verticals because it spans everything we do, right? And it's context dependent, and it evolves constantly with the social interactions we have, the art we consume, the knowledge and skills we accrue. So with all the societal harm that social media monolith has caused us, it also unlocked a lot of good stuff too, right? I use Twitter almost as much as Google now when doing research, because there's like a lot of nuanced and high quality information that comes from having an internet town square, and also discover a lot of artists through SoundCloud and Spotify and so on. But then there's a lot of unrealized potential, I think, still because of this platform lock-in and the work and the reputation and work that you've put into these platforms is part of your identity. And yet you can't use that to unlock new opportunities where that data and reputation you built on there might be relevant. So with DID, it's platform agnostic. So if there's a new service that serves a user better, they can migrate there without being like, oh, I'm going to lose all the writing and all the followers base I have on there. And under this paradigm, like platforms are incentivized to do what's best for users because they can migrate away rather than building algorithms that optimize just for like engagement metrics and like for you to just keep scrolling, right? And then as a like bigger picture, I think for like society, it also opens up the playing field for tastemakers, which drive culture. So today there's a lot of gatekeeping in the arts, whether that's music or video or visual. Like if you make and also like a playing field for curators that kind of surface these arts for people to discover as well. If you're a person who makes really good playlists on Spotify or write really good book reviews on Goodreads, that's reputation that you have built on these platforms, which if it were portable, could get you access to opportunities or, like jobs or like whatever that you really need luck and the right connections for today. So yeah, portable reputation and transparent attributions to identities that are self-sovereign like opens up the space not only accommodates more diverse tastes, but the creators can be rewarded accordingly as well. And so yeah, business organizations right now, like we have in the financial realm, we have a lot of issues with fraud, right? Because there's a lot of neobanks and identity verification technologies have really boomed over the past few years because like the pandemic has kind of catalyzed the number of digital account openings that people where people are banking online. And so there's a lot of fraudsters now like that come from like compromising these identities. So if you have verified digital identities, the payment providers and merchants can save money from reduced fraud, as well as delivering all the payment options that customers want as well. And then separately, we have new startups and businesses forming all the time, right? And right now they have to start from scratch in order to give users a good like personalized experience. But if the users can choose to see them with the relevant information about them, because the data is with the user, to personalize it to their needs, it would really help level the playing field for these new players that might offer like a more society beneficial, user-friendly option rather than the limited options they have today because of platform lock-in.
Yeah, absolutely. You actually mentioned a very interesting point about creators and I guess your creative reputation. We are quite focused on the creative economy and we support artists and fashion startups, for example, technology startups. And it's really fascinating for us as well to learn how does this creativity actually emerge, like, or how do you capture this all data, like to say this is a great designer, and the AI actually nowadays is so good that they can replace any artist and any designer, but actually does it really replace the true creativity? So yeah, I guess my question would be about the new emerging technologies. What do you think, how does the digital identity on blockchain relate to other emerging technologies such as AI and the Internet of Things?
I think like marrying the two or the three emerging technologies is something that's a little bit too early to do right now. There might be like ideas that people have proposed, but it's too early to tell, and I haven't seen like compelling solutions to combine these yet. Like even with Web3 identity, like we're still trying to figure out the interoperability and privacy aspect. even without AI and without IoT. So it becomes much more complex when navigating that. I think like something that I've seen from the creator side of things is identities and humans collaborating with AI technologies like Botto. I don't know if you've heard of that, but like Botto is basically an art engine that combines things like stable diffusion and other kind of I think Midjourney, if I'm not mistaken, and then they kind of suggest these artworks to a DAO. So as an individual member of a DAO, you're like upvoting and downvoting on these different pictures that's generated by an AI, and then the best one that gets upvoted the most by the community then gets auctioned off. So as a DAO member, you can build reputation as like a really good curator because you know voted on a piece of artwork that was won. But also there's an AI kind of entity on there where it's actually doing the artwork generation. So it's still like small niche use cases like this, but like with IoT and kind of like wider AI stuff, I haven't seen any marriage of the two.
We all know that the adoption of blockchain and Web3 tools has been really slow these days, but I also wonder what are some of the challenges facing the widespread adoption of Web3 identity stack? It would be really interesting to know.
For people who want to join a DAO or mint an NFT, like creating a wallet or an identity is like no problem for them. They want to go through those UX hurdles to achieve the goal that they want. So I think like the challenge is like the barrier facing adoption is it's UX hurdles, but also just like a lack of necessity or compelling use case for larger groups of users. Like there has to be a reason for an average individual to download an app or learn how to use a wallet or like sign up for an account. An analogy to this, I guess, is that public key cryptography was around as a technology way before crypto and blockchains and all that. But for a long time, it was used by like technologists and like a niche group of like privacy enthusiasts, right? But it didn't become widely adopted until crypto. And crypto was the reason for people to start getting wallets, and because they wanted to, make investments or, get NFTs and all that. So there has to be like a reason that kind of pushes users across those UX hurdles. And then like single sign-on is ubiquitous now because it was like a night and day UX improvement over the previous era of creating usernames and passwords for everything. So the challenges like facing widespread adoption is more use cases, more like like a product market fit thing that gives people a reason to adopt this technology.
I have read your research and there are so many interesting facts and insights. One thing that you mentioned, creating an identity layer for internet is a hard problem because there is lack of agreement on what it should be and how it should be run. Do you have any thoughts or ideas how this agreement should be developed, or how we should build and where shall we start?
Yeah, so a lot of efforts here is being done by working groups and standards coalitions, and it's definitely not something that can be decided by one company alone, but rather like an ecosystem-wide effort that represents many stakeholders and interests. Yeah, I just joined an identity working group that's a part of the World Economic Forum that's attempting to do this. So I hopefully will have clearer ideas for this in the next few months. But yeah, the answer is like an ecosystem-wide efforts, standards coalitions, and lots of back and forth in these working groups.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, we're also developing a working group for creators and people who work in creative industries on the identity, the subject that I mentioned around how do you actually define the creativity and what are all this data. What is personally most exciting about Web3 industry or digital identity to you? I'm really curious to know about that.
I used to be a tech recruiter, so was on the consumption side of a lot of these credentials. And this is usually information scattered across like LinkedIn, GitHub, Stack Overflow, CVs and so on. So like with LinkedIn and personal sites are the least reliable, as you can add anything on there. Whereas with GitHub and Stack Overflow, they have their own metrics as that are a better proxy of how like knowledgeable and skilled someone is. So it would be nice, I think, as a job seeker, you can aggregate your credentials from all these places. And not only are they verified and like issued by, like universities or previous employers or, different experts within the space, you can aggregate all your credentials from these places. But you don't get platform lock-in, and you can hide and show it selectively to the appropriate people and not have it be public by default. And then, LinkedIn recommendations are also good, but again, platform lock-in. So, with Web3 identity, decentralized identity, you can have things like a Web3 native talent portal where you have like, verifiable recommendations where you each issue each other like praises or like recommendations via like verifiable credentials, or something like that. It would really streamline the job search and that way for like discovery and relevance. But those things can be built on top. When it comes to like career opportunities and talent search, I think that's where like reputation can play a role, like professional reputation. And then on the similar vein, like for the social side of things, you can unlock like access to different perks as opposed to job opportunities. For example, if I could mint the fact that I'm like a top 0.1% listener of a particular artist, which Spotify shows you on the Wrapped thing. But again, like that sticks with Spotify, but you have listened to them and you've done this activity of listening to them, right? So if I can mint that as a credential and that top fan kind of experience is accessible to people who are actually fans and not just those who have money to buy that access, you can unlock things like merch and like tickets and meet and greets and all these access that is only accessible by just buying like with money today, right? And so social platforms could also request that new users share the source of credentials with it and help recommend people to connect with. Like right now, Lens just uses common POAPs, but like directionally, that's the right idea. And like POAPs are a good first step as they're the most ubiquitous credential in Web3 right now. But yeah, I think overarching is just like being able to attest to my interests and like the time that I've put into something that has built various aspects of my identity and being able to like discover and get access to different experiences.
That's really great. On Twitter, you retweeted a tweet from Pedro, who's working on Wallet Connect. His tweet was, one day Web3 will be invisibly embedded into our apps without us noticing. So I wonder, how do you think we can get there? And how do we educate the masses on the topic of digital identity when most don't even know what a wallet or smart contract even is?
So wallets are the how and not the why, right? So most users don't create a wallet just for the sake of creating a wallet. It's usually a means to an end, which could be a variety of things, right? So far it's to participate in DeFi protocols, collect NFTs, join DAOs, and so on. But there's like little incentive right now for a lot of people who can achieve what they want using just, social login and Web2 accounts. So I think in terms of like mass adoption and things like that, we'll get there by building things that you can't achieve right now with Web2 tech, or things that like drastically improve the user experience. So, like portable reputation and so on. So like onboarding, I think, happens at the use case level. And in terms of like education, the context helps give users the information that are most relevant to them. So for example, they might not care about DeFi at all, but want to donate to a Gitcoin grant that supports a local cause. So they create a wallet as a means to that end, but now they have a form of decentralized identity that they can later use to do other things. But the onboarding happens at that one action that they want to achieve. So things like Gitcoin grants. And then, yeah, I think that's been a really nice way to onboard someone who aren't interested in crypto or aren't like tech savvy. So you onboard them to a wallet, or even local communities who are receiving crypto as a donation, right? They're creating wallets and learning about crypto that way. So the NFT mania has done a lot in terms of onboarding, since you get a lot of these mainstream artists coming in and kind of like pushing mints to their existing fan base. So they're creating wallets and collecting NFTs now and so on. And the NFTs are of like mixed quality, but they have the knowledge now and they have the tools at their disposal now to then start exploring different things they can do with their wallet that they can't before, and with just using SoundCloud or Bandcamp or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. What do you think are the future prospects for the Web3 identity stack, and how do you think it will evolve over time? If you think about, many years ahead, or if you want to just mention like where is it headed right now? I guess you mentioned a lot around security and privacy, but I think interesting to see like a bigger picture.
Like right now, as I said before, it's the crypto native side of things, and like even the identity infrastructure that's being built on that isn't quite interoperable with like Web2 tech or like in real life, real world use cases as they should be. So broadly speaking, there's different efforts by various countries to adopt DID as a form of like identification, but this is like government issue, but it's still DID nonetheless. So for things like digital passports, like COVID health passes, these things can also be like unlocked with DID, right? You can like present this verifiable thing that you've taken your vaccinations or whatever. But right now those two are happening in silo, and you need like separate apps and separate experiences for this. So much so that it doesn't really feel like a unified experience right now. So I guess I'm not saying that you need one wallet for everything, but it would just be a much more like a streamlined experience where your digital identity should unlock access to real world use cases as well, and not just kind of DAO native, crypto native things. So I think like a convergence between Web3 standards, chain agnostic standards that, where it doesn't matter what chain the application is deployed on, or whether it's like soul-bound tokens or verifiable credentials or anything like that. I think like the community still has to come to consensus or an agreement on like the best way forward. And it's like, it's not going to be like an either or thing, but over time we'll learn which standards and which technologies are most suitable for different use cases.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really fascinated to see in the future, can't wait to learn and know like where this whole Web3 amazing technology is going to go. And I'm very optimistic about it. So I would love to thank you, Nich, for joining us today. It's really a pleasure to hear all the insights and all the great facts from you. Thank you so much for joining. And I'm just curious, actually, and for our listeners, where can they find your work, and where can they find you on social media?
Sure. So I'm most active on Twitter at Nichanan K, and then my older writings is like is on nichanank.com. But the more recent ones are on our like the 1KX Medium.
Fascinating. Thank you so much again. Have a lovely day, I guess. And yeah, looking forward to stay in touch. Thank you, Nich.
Yeah, likewise.
Thank you for your time.
Thanks for having me.